Hello and good evening. The Supreme Court has dismissed all the review petitions. There were 19 of them as far as the Ayodhya verdict is concerned, and it has also appointed a 3-member inquiry commission headed by former Apex Court Judge V.S. Tripura to inquire into the encounter killing of the 4 accused in the gang rape and murder case of a veterinarian in Telangana. We'll get you all the details on those updates coming in from the top court on Newsnight tonight. I'm Gautam Roy. We'll also be talking in detail about the misconceptions and misrepresentations surrounding the Citizenship Amendment Bill, which got the all clear from both houses of Parliament yesterday, with our guests. But first, as always, our headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi assures people of the Northeast that the Citizenship Amendment Bill will cause no harm to their interests. Hits out at the Congress, charging it of spreading falsehoods on the issue and spreading unrest in the region. Assam Chief Minister also assures the people of the state, says their interests are completely protected, appeals to them to maintain peace. Protests in several parts of the Northeast, agitators call off strike against CAB in Tripura after delegation meets the Home Minister. External Affairs Ministry says CAB is India's internal issue. Fate of 17 assembly constituencies in Jharkhand is sealed as voting for the third phase of assembly elections wraps up peacefully with 62.35% turnout. Hectic campaigning on for the 4th phase of the elections in Jharkhand. Prime Minister Modi slams the Congress in his Dhanbad rally that it gave only dust, smoke and betrayal to the state. Congress's Rahul Gandhi promises huge benefits for farmers and people in the state in his twin rallies. In another productive day in Parliament, Rajya Sabha passes 126 Constitution Amendment Bill, extending reservation of SCs and STs in Parliament and state assemblies after the Lok Sabha. IFSC Bill also gets the nod. Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 is sent to a Joint Select Committee of Parliament for further scrutiny. The Supreme Court dismisses all the 19 review petitions on its Ayodhya judgment, puts to rest the long-standing issue, saying no scope for reconsidering 5-judge Constitution Bench decision. The top court also orders a judicial probe into the Hyderabad encounter linked to the veterinarian gang rape and murder case. Former SC Judge Justice Tripura to head the probe commission. Report to be submitted within 6 months. And international news, fingers crossed in Britain as UK votes in landmark midterm elections. The verdict will decide the future of Brexit. Results expected by Friday morning. Well, the Citizenship Amendment Bill remained at the top of the news cycle today, a day after its passage in the Rajya Sabha, which marked its complete clearance from Parliament as well. While the situation in Assam and some parts of the Northeast remains tenuous in the aftermath, the government has been putting out all stops in letting the nation know the truth about the CAB instead of misconceptions, misrepresentations and all-out lies. The effort was led from the front today by Prime Minister Narendra Modi while addressing a rally in pole-bound Jharkhand. Take a look.
The Citizenship Amendment Bill got Parliament's stamp of approval after the Rajya Sabha's go-ahead on Wednesday night. The law will give citizenship to refugees of 6 minority communities: Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Christians and Parsis from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh if they came to India because of religious persecution before the 31st of December 2014. But the legislation is facing opposition in parts of the northeast India. The government has made it amply clear in Parliament that it is committed to safeguarding the interests of the northeastern people. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated the government's stand the next day, saying there will be no impact on the culture, lifestyle and language of the northeast people because of the CAB, and their interests will not be harmed.
नॉर्थ ईस्ट के करीब करीब सभी राज्य इस कानून के दायरे से बाहर है। आसाम सहित नॉर्थ ईस्ट के अलग अलग क्षेत्रों की परंपराओं, वहां की संस्कृति, वहां की भाषा को मान सम्मान देना, उसे संरक्षण देना, उसे और समृद्ध करना, ये भारतीय जनता पार्टी की प्राथमिकता है।
The PM gave an assurance at an election rally in Jharkhand while taking aim at the rival Congress, charging it of spreading falsehoods on the issue and fueling unrest in the region.
कांग्रेस और उसके साथी नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी आग लगाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। वहां भ्रम फैलाया जा रहा है कि बांग्लादेश से बड़ी संख्या में लोग आ जाएंगे, जबकि कानून पहले से ही भारत आ चुके शरणार्थियों की नागरिकता के लिए।
Union Home Minister Amit Shah had also given similar clarifications and assurances on the CAB in both houses of Parliament during the discussion on the bill. Friday also saw Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal putting out a message to the people of the state, reassuring them about their future. He also appealed to them to eschew violence and maintain peace.
I sincerely appeal to the people of Assam to maintain peace and tranquility in the state. There are some numbers of people who have been spreading the misinformation to mislead the people of Assam and also to create the situation aggravated. Their language, their political right, and also the land right will be well guarded, well protected.
Protests against CAB are on in Assam. The situation is tense in the state and the army has conducted a flag march. Curfew was imposed on Wednesday night in Guwahati till further notice. Army Jawans have been deployed in 4 locations. Assam Rifles troops have been stationed in Tripura as a precautionary measure. Guwahati Police Commissioner Deepak Kumar was removed in the wake of violent protests. Munna Prasad Gupta was appointed in his place. Several Guwahati-bound flights and trains have been cancelled. The 4th day's play in the Ranji Trophy match in Guwahati between Assam and Services Sports Control Board team was cancelled, but the match in Agartala will be played as scheduled. Contrary to this, the situation is completely peaceful in Assam's Barak Valley, and people were seen going about their daily business in an everyday manner. The situation is also normal in Sikkim and other northeastern states. With Kumar Alok in Dhanbad, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And the situation in the northeast over the CAB also found an echo in Parliament today. The Congress and other opposition parties tried to corner the government, but the government hit right back, putting the opposition in the dock for fanning the fires in the region. In contrast, the party that started last night for refugees who are now set to get a national identity just went on and on through the day. The External Affairs Ministry also put across its stand on the issue, which is being conveyed through diplomatic channels to other nations as well, apart from clearing the air about Bangladesh Foreign Minister's visit.
Even as protests continue in some parts of the northeast, the Modi government continues its efforts to assuage all fears. A delegation from Tripura of Joint Movement Against Citizenship Amendment Bill met Union Home Minister Amit Shah and discussed concerns over the Citizenship Amendment Bill. After detailed discussions and assurances from him, they called off the strike in the state.
Honorable Minister, we have placed all our demand and all our issue, and he has listened patiently, and he also has addressed that he will think and he will see what can be done, and he has had sympathy towards the indigenous people of Tripura, and also he also had extended the sympathy and greeting from the Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Home Minister also had requested us to go back again and think about what solution can be brought together collectively. We had a good meeting, and we also appeal to all our indigenous people to bring the peace and harmony in the state. And we have also stated yesterday, after having a joint press conference with Honorable Chief Minister, and we also had appealed our peoples that even if the other community attack us, we will still resist and will show our peaceful, that which we always love and which we always practice.
We have been assured that whatsoever is possible from their end, they will surely try to launch and do some constitutionally also, and we are given hope. So whenever it is possible, we'll go back and sit together with our political parties, friends, and come back again with the proposal which can be, I think, resolved. And otherwise, though, that will be very problem. It will continue also. So we don't like to continue violence also. We don't like to live under violence also.
Well, there are some protests in parts of the northeast. Elsewhere across the country, celebrations continue among those who will benefit from the amendments.
इस बिल के समर्थन में तो पूरा देश खड़ा हुआ है और ये राष्ट्र हित के लिए है।
नागरिकता के लिए सर नया बिल जो ला रही है उसमें हम लोगों के लिए जो जल्दी से जल्दी नागरिकता मिलेगी और हमारा भविष्य सुरक्षित हो पाएगा, इससे बहुत खुशी है सर।
नागरिकता बिल जो पास हुआ है इससे पूरे देश पूरी स्टेट में खुशी है और सब खुशी मना रहे हैं। हमारे रिफ्यूजी भाई जो 50 साल से संघर्ष कर रहे थे, आज उनको भी इंसाफ मिला है।
मैं बहुत खुश हूँ इस बिल के बारे में, क्योंकि हमारे जो भाई थे दूसरे मुल्कों में रह रहे थे, उनके लिए इतनी परेशानी थी। हमारी सरकार ने जो काम किया है बहुत ही इसके लिए मैं बहुत ही खुश हूँ।
लोकसभा में और राज्यसभा में सीएबी बिल पास हुआ है, उसकी हम प्रशंसा करते हैं। जो बाहर से रिफ्यूजी आए हुए थे उनको हमारे देश में नागरिकता नहीं मिल रही थी, उनको अब नागरिकता मिल जाएगी।
जो लोगों की ख्वाहिश थी कि हमें यहाँ पे नागरिकता मिलनी चाहिए, जो कि लोगों ने सोचा भी नहीं था, हम इसका मोदी सरकार का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं।
The issue of the Citizenship Amendment Bill was raised in Parliament as well. Congress brought up the fallout of the bill in the northeast. The government responded by accusing the opposition parties in the region of spreading false propaganda to fuel protests.
In the wake of citizenship bill that has been passed in both the houses of parliament, the entire northeastern region, barring a few places, are in turmoil. They are creating the violence in the northeast area and Assam area. They are instigating the violence in the northeast area and Assam. I condemn their attitude.
Parliamentarians from the northeast expressed satisfaction with the amendment and appealed for calm.
प्रधानमंत्री जी ने स्पष्ट रूप से आश्वासन दिया है कि नॉर्थ ईस्ट के जो भी इंडिजिनस कम्युनिटीज है उनका लिंग्विस्टिक, उनके सोशल, कल्चरल, पॉलिटिकल राइट्स 100% प्रोटेक्शन होगा।
मैं कहना चाहता हूं असम के लोगों को कि शांति बनाए रखें और मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि ये जो बिल आया इससे कोई असम की कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है कि जो जैसे कहा गया है कि असम के लोगों को नौकरी नहीं मिलेगी।
On another front, India has denied reports connecting Bangladesh's Foreign Minister A.K. Abdul Momen's cancelling of his visit to India with the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Bill.
हमारे संबंध बहुत ही मजबूत है, प्रगाढ़ है, और जैसा दोनों देशों के नेताओं ने बार बार कहा है कि अभी हमारा रिश्ते का जो सोनाली अध्याय है उसके हम बीच में हैं। मुझे नहीं लगता है कि इससे ज़्यादा इस कैंसिलेशन में इससे ज़्यादा कुछ ज़्यादा पढ़ने की ज़रूरत है।
The Ministry of External Affairs also said that they have reached out to members of the US Congress and other stakeholders on the Citizenship Amendment Bill and are hopeful that they will understand India's position. Reacting to Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's comments on the CAB, the MEA advised him to focus on its treatment of minorities rather than commenting on India's internal matters. The Citizenship Amendment Bill offers the promise of a better future to persecuted refugees from minority communities who have fled from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. With Abhishek Jha and Parliament team, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Now, this is no doubt a very sensitive and contentious issue, but much of that is manufactured, is what we are going to let you know now, because with the help of the government's information wing, we prepared what can really be called the myth as well as the truth about the CAB, and we've got these myth busters that are very, very clearly there. The myth, of course, is that the bill will trigger fresh migration of Hindus from Bangladesh. But the fact is, it is only a constitutional process to give citizenship to those denied basic civil rights for the last 70 years. This is fairly exhaustive. It's long, but do bear with me. The myth is bill will trigger fresh migration of Hindus from Bangladesh. But the fact is, it aims to target genuine refugees and not the intruders. Furthermore, what is happening is, the myth again that is being spread is bill will provide citizenship to Bengali Hindus. But the fact is, citizenship is not automatic here. You have to apply for it, and there's a process that you have to undergo. The bill will provide citizenship to Bengali Hindus. That still remains a myth, but the fact is, CAB is only enabling legislation for persecuted minorities in Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. So it makes them eligible, but it does not automatically grant citizenship. Furthermore, the myth is bill dilutes the Assam Accord. Nothing is further from the truth. No change in cut-off date of March 24, 1971 for detection and deportation of illegal immigrants. That's been specified in the Assam Accord, so there's no change there. Again, bill is against interest of indigenous people of Assam. That's a myth. The fact is, CAB is applicable pan-India and not just to Assam. So it's not as if a certain set of people, a specific set of people is being targeted because of this. Furthermore, if you look at what the myths and the facts are, if we move further on, we will see that the bill is against the interest of indigenous people of Assam is again the myth, and the fact is CAB not contrary to NRC, which is being updated to protect indigenous communities from illegal immigrants. So there's a complete difference in what is being projected and what the bill actually is. Again, the myth is that the bill is employed to grab tribal land, particularly in the northeast. Hindu Bengalis settled in Barak Valley away from tribal belts and blocks, so there is no way that they can go and grab tribal land. The fact again is that the CAB does not contradict laws and regulations for tribal land protection. There is nothing in that about land as far as tribal land is concerned in the CAB. The fact is also that the CAB is not applicable to areas where inner line permit provisions and 6th schedule of the Constitution apply. So all these areas that enjoy these special provisions, they continue to do so. Also, the fact is that the ILP only applies to Arunachal, Nagaland, Mizoram and Manipur and parts of Ladakh, so there is no conflict over there as far as the CAB is concerned. Also, the CAB does not violate any provision of Article 371, which specifies those special provisions for certain parts of the country, in which a large part of the northeast is included. Now, the myth is CAB will lead to domination of Bengali-speaking people. Fact, most Hindu Bengali population is settled in the Barak Valley, where Bengali is the second state language. So there is no such thing that these people will dominate. They are confined to a particular part of Assam. Again, the myth remains the same, but the fact is Hindu Bengalis in Brahmaputra Valley settled in isolated pockets, having adapted to Assamese language. So there is no threat as such to the culture, the ethnicity, the demographics, or whatever you might call it, to that particular part of the country. Bengali Hindus will become a burden for Assam. That's again a myth that is being spread. The fact is the bill is applicable to the entire country. So there is no such thing that a specific area of the country is being targeted. Again, the myth is there and the fact is completely different. Persecuted minorities not settled only in Assam. They are in different parts of the country. They are in Punjab, they are in Rajasthan, just to give a few examples. They are in Delhi as well, where we are at the moment. The myth, of course, is bill will trigger fresh migration of Hindus from Bangladesh. How can that happen? The fact is cut-off date of the 31st of December 2014 to limit beneficiaries of CAB is there in the bill. So the people who've come after this, they will not benefit because of this bill. The myth is that the bill will trigger fresh migration of Hindus from Bangladesh, but the fact again is most minorities are already, they migrated from Bangladesh. There is a large scale that is already moved here to India. Again, if you stick with that myth, the fact again remains scale of atrocities against Bangladesh minorities has come down in recent years. So there is less and less reason for people to come into India from Bangladesh, because it's not the way it was earlier. Things have changed. Also, large-scale migration because of religious persecution is a very remote possibility now, because there aren't too many people there and things have changed. That is a reiteration of the previous points. Again, the myth is that what has happened is that the CAB will only affect the interest of minorities in Assam. That is a total myth. The fact is that the CAB applies to minorities from other countries and has no connection to minorities in Assam. Now, if you look further, the myth is that the bill discriminates against Muslims. Again, the fact any eligible foreigner from any religion can apply for Indian citizenship. So it doesn't exclude anyone. Again, if you stick with that myth, the fact again remains is that eligibility determined by provisions of Citizenship Act 1955. That's there. It's been specified in that act. Also, CAB does not change the eligibility provisions at all. It is changing eligibility provisions for certain communities from certain countries, but the larger provisions that apply to everyone, no exclusions, still remain. And the Home Minister has already said 566 Muslims from Pakistan got Indian citizenship in the last few years. So there's nothing that says that Muslims coming in from other countries, if they do not have the grounds, they will not get the citizenship. But if they have valid grounds, and there are grounds that are specified in the Citizenship Bill of 1955, they can apply and they can get citizenship. Again, another fact to consider is the CAB is only enabling persecuted minorities from 3 nations to seek Indian citizenship. So that is what the CAB's sole purpose is. It does not discriminate against Muslims. Furthermore, if you look at this particular myth busters about the CAB, you will find that the CAB does not guarantee citizenship to all minorities from these 3 nations. So it makes you eligible, you can apply, but you have to undergo a certain process and then only can you get India's citizenship. Again, the myth is CAB is against Article 14 of the Constitution, which is a fundamental right. And the fact is Article 14 bars discrimination. There is no bar on distinguishing anyone. So I'll explain to you what this distinguishing part also means. It means that Article 14 is there is no bar on distinguishing between the persecuted and the persecutor. So you can distinguish as far as the persecutor is concerned, and you can give them something that will help them get a life of dignity. And again, distinguishing led to quotas and other benefits for SCs and STs, women and others as well. So that is how it is being differentiated. You can not discriminate, but you can distinguish. The myth is that the CAB and NRC are related. Again, there's nothing further from the two. CAB separated from NRC, where persecuted minorities are being given humanitarian treatment. This is all because of humanitarian grounds, because these people were stateless. CAB not for identifying aliens, but for giving refugees their rights. So there's a difference over there as well in morality, in humanitarianism. CAB to help eliminate shortcomings in NRC of Assam that has been implemented over there. So that to that extent the CAB is related to the NRC, that it will help take away some of those issues that have cropped up because of NRC and Assam. Now another myth is that the CAB is unfair to people from Myanmar, Sri Lanka and Nepal. Again, that is not the case. Rohingyas issue in Myanmar is unrelated to the partition. Also, India not the only option for Muslims to seek refuge in the subcontinent. They have other Muslim dominated countries as well. The fact also is that Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains and Parsis cannot seek refuge in other Muslim countries because they've been coming to India primarily because of facing persecution, religious persecution in those countries. And difficult to distinguish between terrorists and genuine refugees among Rohingyas as well. That's what the government is putting across. Of course, another pointer here is persecuted Tamil Hindus in Sri Lanka already given citizenship in India. They've come here, it's happened in the past, they've got citizenship. Religious persecution is no issue in Nepal. We all know that. Nepal, one of the most friendliest countries that we have as far as our neighborhood is concerned. So these are the various pointers that are well worth considering whenever we're talking about debating, or people who are getting also very excited about the CAB, they need to consider all these points, and we'll talk about them further as well as we go along in Newsnight. Just stay with us.
और इस गीत के बाद
छाया गीत
ऑल इंडिया रेडियो
बहुत रोमांटिक Ahead of the trade negotiations that are slated दिवस के साथ-साथ it have undergone 9 revisions. Kohli with 903 rating points is 34 points behind Smith 900.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsnight, and we're talking about the CAB, how it has become a contentious and sensitive issue because a lot a lot of talk that is being happening in the country is being manufactured, a lot of misconception, a lot of misrepresentation is taking place, and that brings up our In Focus tonight, and it is CAB myths versus facts. And to talk about it, we have Chakshu Roy, Head of Outreach at PRS Legislative Research, and Shubhamal Bhattacharjee also joined us. He's a well-known columnist. Welcome to both of you. First, Chakshu, if I could ask you, why is it, do you think, that there is such a furore over CAB when in terms of its provisions is pretty much clear as to what is the purpose, who will it benefit, and all these things that are being said that are negative about it are just not true?
Gautam, I think perhaps what would be better is for people to read and go into the details of what the legislation is doing exactly. And if you give me 2 minutes, I'll just break down the legislation for you. Now, in India, our citizenship law provides, which was made in the 1950s, it provides a mechanism for people to get citizenship of the country. Yes. Now, one mechanism is if I am born in this country and my parents are Indian, I automatically get a citizenship. Or, for example, I can get a citizenship by naturalization, or I can get a citizenship by registration. So, I live in this country for an X amount of time. I subscribe an oath to the constitution, and then I fulfill certain residency conditions, and I get a citizenship. Now, over the years, what has happened is that many a times people have taken a valid visa to enter our country and then stayed beyond the validity of their visa, or people have entered the country without valid documents. Now, our law designates these two kinds of individuals who remain in the country without proper documentation as illegal immigrants. Our citizenship law prohibits illegal immigrants from getting a citizenship of the country. So, that's the background. Now, what is the bill doing? One, bill is not intended for current Indian citizens. It is intended for individuals who have come into this country before a specific date, and that specific date is the 31st of December 2014. And the bill says that if individuals from 3 countries who share a land border with India, which is India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, if they have come to this country and they belong to 6 religious communities, and the statement of objects and reasons of the bill says that if they have been persecuted on religious grounds, they can apply for citizenship, even though they have overstayed their visas or have entered the country without proper documentation. And if they conform with the residency conditions, which is 1 year and 5 years, then they will be given citizenship. So, that's one thing that the bill is doing. The second thing that the bill is doing is that it is also creating an exception and saying that this bill, it will be applicable throughout the country, but there are certain parts of the country where the provisions of this bill will not be applicable. And these are the Schedule 6 areas that you mentioned at the beginning of the program, certain areas of Assam, and also areas where the inner line permit is applicable, wherein even if I need to visit that place, I need to get proper permission to go there. Yeah. Finally, the bill is doing one additional thing. Our laws provide for a category called overseas, Indian citizens, and what this category does is that a person could be a foreign citizen, but he might have roots in India. Mm-hmm. So what they get is they get an OCI card, which allows them to freely come into the country. Yeah. And what the bill is doing is, it is saying that if OCIs violate the conditions of the Citizenship Act, or they violate laws which might be prescribed by the central government, then their OCI status can be withdrawn. Okay. So that's roughly as to what the bill is doing. And if we have clarity about what the bill is doing, then it makes it slightly more easier to understand what the implications of the bill are.
Mm-hmm. Now, if it can be explained so readily and simply, Shubhamal, why are we having the kind of scenario that is we've seen unfold even before the bill was passed in both houses of Parliament? It's taken a different turn altogether after the bill was passed in the Rajya Sabha yesterday.
Yeah, if you notice, Gautam, even before the bill was brought to the cabinet for its approval, the Home Minister had met more than 140 groups from the Northeast, and personally he explained to them, what are the provisions of the bill. Now there's a wonderful mythbusters that you just put out, detailing everything. The crystal clear provisions of the bill have been made to be known to the leaders across political and the civil society in the region. But somewhere, the emotional sentiments from the past related to the influx of illegal migrants from the neighborhood has always been a very, very emotive feature in the northeastern region, and somewhere that has got overcome, and somewhere maybe even a lot of the opposition party have been trying to fuel all kinds of misinformation about the bill. For example, your mythbuster, you mentioned about that 31st December 2014 cutoff date. So those people who are going to benefit from the passage of this bill are already in the country. No fresh influx is coming, but a lot of people are thinking, and a lot
even if people come, they will be illegal.
Absolutely, and rumor mongering is going on in a big way that hordes and hordes of people will come and take our culture and take our land and all these things away. Already in the northeast, as Mr. Chakshu has explained, ILP and 6th schedule area. I am born in a 6th schedule district of Assam. I can't buy land there. So these people who will get the citizen are nowhere going to come closer to that. So there are a lot of constitutional provisions for the northeast that already take care of this. So many of these concerns are found a little bit or I would say the protests are getting a little bit too much out of context. And I think that an effort again has to be made to reach out to most of these youngsters who are taking the street, and of course there are also elements who are trying to fan it through social media and other means. A lot of Assam and even Meghalaya are today out of the mobile internet's connectivity. I would think sanity has to be maintained. Now the most important thing is that people, along with the law and order management and all, even people have to be reached out. You saw the Home Minister reaching out to the group from Tripura today. I think that exercise has to be done with a lot of the groups in Assam, because by and large they have contributed so much along with everyone in the country. And Assam, and particularly the northeastern region under Prime Minister Modi, is looking at a completely completely different approach. Actist, the efforts to get the northeastern opportunities out to the world on the eastern side through the actist policy, that's a great effort. So all these things cannot be disturbed, and hence at this stage I think all these extensive mythbusters that you have done, I think they again have to be reinforced to our brothers and sisters there.
Yes, and Chakshu, the other aspect is about how it's being alleged to be discriminatory to community which is the Muslim, and discriminatory to people who might want to come to India from other countries apart from the three countries specified, namely, I mean, the opposition's mentioned Myanmar, Sri Lanka and others, even Nepal for that matter. How do you explain that particular aspect of this particular conflagration that we see?
Gautam, when the bill was being debated in the two houses of parliament, many of the issues that you just mentioned were raised. Let me walk through as to how the debate panned out and what were the different viewpoints that were taken. So the Home Minister, in his speech when he was explaining the bill and when he was also moving the bill for consideration, pointed out that citizens of other countries have the option, if they have come into India, for applying through the regular citizenship channels, and this particular bill was only carving out an exception for 3 countries, citizens of 3 countries and 6 religious denominations. So the counter to that from the opposition was that these 6 denominations did not contain the denomination of one particular religion. The Home Minister's response to that was that everybody was welcome into the country, and you quoted some statistics from the Home Minister that he said
566
that 566 individuals are granted citizenship. So the debate then boiled down to the fact as to whether our constitution, which provides for a reasonable classification under Article 14, is the citizenship amendment, was it violative of that also. the Home Minister was of the opinion and the Law Minister in Rajya Sabha was of the opinion that the law was vetted before it came to Parliament, and they very firmly believed that it was not violative. The opposition on the other hand believed that some of the provisions in the bill did not fall under the reasonable classification scenario.
Yes, and Shubhamal, again it boils down to what the government is saying, what the opposition is saying, and a final view is you think yet to emerge, or it stands and Parliament has been well within its right to pass this bill in the form and shape that it has?
I think Parliament has debated it extensively, even beyond the contents of the bill. The admissibility of the bill was also voted for in the Lok Sabha, as you would have seen. I think the provisions are very much within the purview of what is enshrined in the Constitution. I think this is a very good humanitarian step. People from these three neighboring countries have been languishing in inhuman conditions in various places. The children don't get admission, they can't get jobs. So how long will they continue? So that's something that I would think has factored in everything, and the President's assent is something that is awaited. I think in the next steps, which means the implementation of this new act, the provisions that are there, the rules, regulations and all that has to be drafted, and reasonably I would think by that time every shades of opposition that are coming up, that would be convinced that in principle this is a very good decision, and in practice of the law or the spirit of the law, this is absolutely a right piece of legislation.
Chakshu, what Shubhamal referred to in terms of rules and regulations and process, do you feel that this bill requires something new in terms of how things have happened in the past, because people have been getting citizenship as well according to the existing provisions, and they've been amended in the past as well of the Citizenship Act, so that process can continue and be applied to the CABA as well, or you need a separate set of rules and processes?
Gautam, there are some existing mechanisms which are already in place. Correct. As you rightly mentioned, when it comes to citizenship. There are also some mechanisms in place for immigrants who have been persecuted on religious ground, and there's I think a long-term visa process that is applicable. There might be some new regulation that would be required, because there was a 2015 notification which first carved out conditions for these three countries. There might be some more regulation that will be required, but that will only come after the President has assented to the bill.
Mm-hmm. Because at some level people are also, Shubhamal, asking how will persecution be established? Does that need to be established, or because the ministers, both the Law Minister and the Home Minister, said that there is ample evidence that people have been persecuted, these people have been persecuted, which is why they have come into the country in the way that they have, leaving everything behind?
I think the bill has the provision that the certificate of naturalization and registration that would be provided would be determined in terms of the rules and regulation that would be in place. So I think I would leave it to the wisdom of the Law Ministry and the Home Ministry to devise that. I would think that most of the concerns and most of the factors have been taken into consideration up till now when all the exercise has been done. I would think, as Mr. Chakshu also mentioned, that 7 September 2015 notification made it clear that these 6 minorities from these 3 countries, people who have already come, are no more illegal in the context of the Passport Entry India Act 1920 and Foreigners Act 46. Yes. So I think this was a natural conclusion that they would be not leaving this country, they would be here.
The next step.
Absolutely, and you are giving them the gift of citizenship and welcoming them to be Indian citizens.
Mm-hmm. And again, the premise is of course that it will undo the wrong of history. Chakshu, how relevant and valid is that in terms of giving the kind of legs this legislation needs in the eyes of everybody in the country?
Gautam, when the law was being debated in Rajya Sabha, I heard one of the members of Parliament, talk about that this is a humanitarian law, and that was something that was echoed across the two houses. I think one or two things that need to be established is what is the purpose of this law, and the purpose of this law is, as stated in the statement of objects and reasons, is to provide an X set of people who perhaps have suffered religious persecution in the countries which have a state religion, to come to and who are already in our country, and provide them a mechanism for gaining citizenship. I think in the context, and this is a context that has been looked at by a parliamentary standing committee. What we are now looking at is the process of how this will roll out, and that's going to be an ongoing series of steps. Step one obviously is the government's initiative of bringing this bill. Incidentally, this bill came out in 2016. It was passed by Lok Sabha, it lapsed. Before it lapsed, it was examined by a select committee of parliament which gave its report. One or two of those recommendations of the report were incorporated in the new bill. The new bill has now
The exemptions came in because of that.
The exemptions came in because of that, and also the specification that the central government should specify the law in a notification, violation of which would lead to revocation of OCI. So that was also specified. Now the legislative part of the process is over. The final step being that as and when the president signs off on the bill, the concerned departments will start rolling those out. That process is obviously a time consuming process because it involves due diligence, and it will involve people filling out forms. It involves people establishing, as Subimal was pointing out, their bona fides in applying for the citizenship. Something that you mentioned early on was that the bill is not creating an automatic process.
No.
And something that was discussed in the House was that it is more of an enabling bill, which is enabling
Nobody is
the
getting citizenship overnight. There has to be a process. You have to first seek it, you have to apply for it, and then only the process will then be put to your application, right? That's how it will
That is
happen.
correct. That is correct.
And then what is the road ahead here, Shubhimal? Because this sort of situation, particularly in the northeast that we're seeing, it cannot continue. It has to come to some sort of a logical end.
I think the bill applies to the whole of the country, and almost all the other parts of the country have welcomed the move, and you would have seen even in your visuals also that has shown that. Now, as far as Northeast is concerned, most of the states have been taken care of. The concerns today are primarily the troubles that have happened are mostly in Assam and some parts of Meghalaya and Tripura. Tripura, you saw that the government has already made an effort and have spoken to the one of the major agitating groups. I think in a certain,
supposed to be an indefinite one.
absolutely, they've called off and they've understood the whole premise behind the bill. I think the efforts are already on to first diffuse the situation, make the people understand, and then move ahead, because it's nowhere harming the interests of
by
the
one of our correspondents joining us from Silchar. Rahul is joining us from there. Rahul, what can you tell us about the current situation, A, and B, the efforts that are being made to make people understand how this bill is not inimical in any way to their interest, and you've seen how that has borne fruit in Tripura. What about Assam and the larger northeast region? Rahul, can you hear me? Ruhul, if you can hear me, let me ask you again. Just tell us about the situation there in the context of how the efforts are on to let people know and understand what the bill is actually about and what it's not, and what sort of an impact is that effort having on the agitation that is taking place in Assam. You're in Silchar. Let us know. Thank you. But it seems Ruhul can't hear me at the moment. We'll try and reconnect. But at this point, Chakshu Roy and Shubham Bhattacharya, I'd like to thank you for joining us to talk about the CAB and the kind of myths that are being spread about it. Some are misconceptions, some are misrepresentations, misinterpretations, and some are blatant lies. And that is being countered through this medium as well, because the government is very clear what was the intent of this bill. It was humanitarian, largely the purpose of that bill, and it was not against any community, be it from outside or within the country. Well, we'll move along now, and along with the third phase of polling, which saw over 62% of voting, Jharkhand also saw intense campaigning unfolding today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi campaigned in Dhanbad seeking votes for BJP's candidates based on its work, while attacking the Congress for only promoting vested interests of its leaders. Former Congress chief Rahul Gandhi also addressed 2 rallies in the state, promising several benefits for farmers as well as people of the state if his party comes to power.
Electioneering in Jharkhand reached a peak on Thursday as people on the one hand thronged polling booths to vote in the third phase, and campaigning for the remaining phases went on in full swing on the other. Prime Minister Narendra Modi campaigned in Dhanbad, where he slammed the Congress party in his address at a rally as a party that had given Jharkhand only dust, smoke and betrayal, while the BJP, he said, has always worked in the national interest.
कांग्रेस और उसके सहयोगियों ने अगर धनबाद को, देवघर को, झारखंड को कुछ दिया है तो क्या दिया है? धूल, धुआं और धोखा.
Pointing out the issue of potable drinking water, Prime Minister Modi assured the people of Dhanbad in particular that the government would be ensuring clean water in every home across the country by 2024 at a cost of 3.5 lakh crore rupees. He slammed the Congress as a party only concerned about its vested interests.
2024 तक देश के हर घर को जल देने का काम करेंगे, ये मैंने आपसे कहा था. हमने सरकार बनते ही इस संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए जल शक्ति का अलग मंत्रालय बनाया, जल शक्ति के लिए अलग बजट लगाया, और इतना ही नहीं, जल जीवन मिशन भी शुरू हो चुका है.
For the Congress party, former party chief Rahul Gandhi addressed rallies in Godda and Sahibganj. He promised huge benefits for the people of the state, especially farmers.
मिलकर एक साथ होकर झारखंड का किसान, झारखंड का मजदूर, झारखंड के छोटे दुकानदार, युवा, माताएं, बहनें सब एक होकर ये 10-15 उद्योगपतियों की सरकार को हम यहां से हटाएंगे और गरीबों की, कमजोर लोगों की सरकार लाएंगे. ये 10-15 उद्योगपतियों की सरकार को हम यहां से हटाएंगे और गरीबों की, कमजोर लोगों की सरकार लाएंगे.
Leaders of the JMM and JVMP also held rallies to woo voters. Polling in Jharkhand is being held in 5 phases. 2 more phases are still to go to polls. Counting will be held on the 23rd of December. With Kumar Alok in Dhanbad and Diwakar Kumar in Ranchi. News Night Desk, DD India.
Now, the voters of Jharkhand sealed the fate of 309 candidates in the third phase of Jharkhand Assembly elections on Thursday. The elections were concluded peacefully, where an estimated 62.35% percentage of polling was recorded on an average. More in this report.
17 constituencies of Jharkhand went to polls in their third phase on Thursday. Majority of the constituencies that went to polls in the third phase were non-tribal urban ones. Due to security reasons, polling in 12 seats concluded by 3 p.m, while in 5 other seats of Ranchi, Hatia, Kanke, Barkatha and Ramgarh it was held till 5 p.m.
इन 17 विधानसभा क्षेत्रों का जो औसत मतदान प्रतिशत है वह 62.35% रहा. पूरी मतदान की प्रक्रिया शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से बिना एक भी अप्रिय घटना के संपादित हुई है.
Tight security arrangements were made at all left-wing extremism-infested polling stations. Nearly 42,000 security personnel were deployed to ensure free and fair polls.
100% कवरेज दिया गया है फोर्स का सभी जो बूथ्स पे फोर्सेस गई हैं उनको कनेक्टिविटी दी गई है कि वो हर घंटे हमें स्थिति से अवगत कराते रहें। यदि कहीं कोई समस्या है तो उसके लिए हमारे पास विशेष QRTs भी सभी थाना प्रभारियों के पास हैं।
Long queues were seen on all the booths since morning. Voters from all walks of life were seen participating with enthusiasm to celebrate the festival of democracy.
आज मुझे वोट देके बहुत खुशी हुई क्योंकि मैं फर्स्ट वोटर बना और युवा से चाहता हूं कि वो भी पहले आए और पहले वोट करें क्योंकि युवा का ये देश बनना चाहिए।
वोट दे हम अच्छा ही लग रहा है। वोट देने में बहुत दिन से आते हैं। सबको वोट देना चाहिए, जिसको अधिकार है वोट का उसी का वोट देना चाहिए।
Political leaders and famous personalities also exercised their right to franchise. Among them were India's former cricket captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni, former Union Minister Jayant Sinha and former Chief Minister Babulal Marandi. The Election Commission also made elaborate arrangements to ensure maximum voter turnout. Model polling booths were established with selfie points to make voting a fulfilling experience. Of the 309 candidates in the third phase, 32 were women candidates and 99 were independents. The assembly elections in Jharkhand are being held in 5 phases. Voting for the fourth phase will be held on the 16th of December, while the fifth phase of polling will take place on the 20th of December. Counting of votes will take place on the 23rd December. With Divakar and Abhishek Singh, Bureau Report, DD India.
Back in the national capital, the penultimate day of the winter session of Parliament saw smooth functioning. Key bills such as the Constitution Amendment Bill to extend reservation for SCs and STs in Lok Sabha and state assemblies was passed in the Rajya Sabha, while the Lok Sabha passed the bill which will allow the setting up of central Sanskrit universities. Here's more.
Thursday saw smooth functioning of both houses of Parliament with significant questions being answered and important issues being taken up during 0 hour. The Rajya Sabha, after heated exchange between the Treasury and opposition benches, unanimously passed a Constitution Amendment Bill to extend reservation to SCs and STs in Lok Sabha and state assemblies by another 10 years. Lok Sabha had passed the bill on December 10. Reservation for members of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes given for the past 70 years in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies is due to end on January 25, 2020.
ये बार-बार कहते हैं कि मोदी जी की सरकार आरक्षण समाप्त करेगी, मोदी जी की सरकार आरक्षण कभी समाप्त नहीं करेगी, ये हम साफ-साफ कहना चाहते हैं। दूसरी बात, बार-बार कहते हैं कि मोदी जी की सरकार संविधान के साथ तोड़मोड़ करेगी, ये बिल्कुल गलत आरोप लगाते हैं। मोदी जी की सरकार पर जवाब देता हूं तो ये कहते हैं भारत सरकार कभी नहीं ये करेगी।
The House also gave its nod to a bill that provides for establishment of an authority to develop and regulate the financial services market in the international financial services centers in India, with the Rajya Sabha passing it by a voice vote. Earlier, the upper house passed a resolution to nominate 10 members for a joint parliamentary committee, which would review the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019. The Lok Sabha on Wednesday had referred the bill to a joint select committee of both houses of Parliament. During 0 hour, MP GVL Narasimha Rao suggested that the trial of the Mumbai 2611 mastermind be carried out not in Pakistan but in an international court.
Hafiz Saeed is the mastermind of 2611 attacks in Mumbai, and it is important that such global terrorists are tried not in their home country, because we know Pakistan is actually providing refuge and patronage to such elements. So I hope this House joins me in condemning actions of Pakistan in letting such people go scot-free.
In the afternoon, Union Minister Narendra Singh Tomar replied to a debate on damage to crops and the impact on farmers. He assured the House that many measures were being taken to double farmers' income by 2022. He said low output has led to the prices of onions shooting up.
अगर हम देखेंगे तो लगभग 15.8 लाख टन का गैप है। अब ये जो गैप है तो निश्चित रूप से इसके कारण तकलीफ होना स्वाभाविक ही है, लेकिन आप अगर देखेंगे तो सरकार ने इससे निपटने के लिए एक्सपोर्ट पर भी प्रतिबंध लगाया और इंपोर्ट करने के लिए भी ऑर्डर दिए।
The Central Sanskrit University Bill was passed on Thursday after discussion. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code's Second Amendment Bill 2019 was introduced in the Lok Sabha by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman during the pre-lunch session. The amendment is for streamlining corporate insolvency resolution process and to protect last-mile funding to promote investment in sectors that are financially distressed. The Union Cabinet gave its approval to the amendments last Wednesday.
Why are we coming here again now? July we came with an amendment.
Now I'm coming back again with an amendment because there is a lot of doubt in the mind of small home buyers and others saying, will the whole process be waiting for years? Can we have some clarity and so on? So if we have to bring in clarity, some amendments are required in addition to what we did in July, and therefore I've come back.
All in all, it was a fruitful day, with ample business conducted in both houses of Parliament. Friday is the last day of the ongoing winter session. With inputs from the Parliament team, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Now, the Supreme Court has appointed a 3-member inquiry commission to look into the encounter killing of the 4 accused in the Telangana gang rape and murder case. The commission, headed by former Apex Court Judge V.S. Tripura, also includes former Bombay High Court Judge Rekha Sondur Baldota and ex-CBI Director D.R. Karthikeyan. The commission will submit its report to the Supreme Court in 6 months, and security to the commission shall be provided by the CRPF. A bench headed by Chief Justice S.A. Bobde stayed proceedings pending in the Telangana High Court and the NHRC in the case and sought an SIT report into the case, saying no other authority shall inquire into the matter pending before the Commission of Inquiry till further orders. At the outset, the bench was of the view that there should be impartial inquiry into encounter deaths of the 4 accused. And the top court also dismissed today a batch of petitions seeking review of its 9th of November Ayodhya land dispute case verdict, which cleared the way for the construction of the Ram temple at the disputed site. A 5-judge bench headed by Chief Justice S.A. Bobde, which took these review pleas for consideration in chamber, rejected them after finding no merits. There were 18 review petitions, out of which 9 had been filed by parties who were part of the earlier litigation and the other 9 filed by third parties. The bench considered review pleas of only those who were parties to the 4 lawsuits filed initially. With the rejection of these review petitions, the consequential request of parties for an open court hearing on these pleas also got dismissed. Let's now get you some more updates from around the country in our regional roundup.
On Thursday, portfolios were allocated to various ministries in the Mahavikas Aghadi government in Maharashtra. While Shiv Sena got Home, Urban Development, Environment and Agriculture ministries, the NCP was given Rural Development and Finance. It was decided that the Congress will handle Revenue, School Education and Tribal Welfare ministries. The Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray will be in charge of all other portfolios that have not been allocated till now. Pakistan continued its ceasefire violation as it shelled areas of Uri, Poonch and Hiranagar today. Pakistani troops once again fired in Shahpur and Keran sectors across the line of control in Poonch district. The Indian soldiers responded sternly to the violations. Himachal Pradesh received fresh snowfall in many areas including Kulu Manali. This is the first snowfall of the season in Manali. Snowfall continues in Uttarakhand too. Badrinath, Kedarnath also saw the outbreak of cold wave due to snowfall today. In Uttarakhand, all schools will be closed tomorrow, citing meteorological department's warning of fresh snowfall.
Well, top international news now, and it's the first Christmas election in Britain since 1923, but it's the third general election since 2016. A lot hinges on it as well, because the results will determine whether incumbent Prime Minister Boris Johnson can return to 10 Downing Street or not and go full steam ahead to meet the latest Brexit deadline, which is of the 31st of January next year. Or there will be another referendum on whether the UK should leave the EU or not, as his Labour rivals have promised if they win the elections. Turnout has been in the millions, but first counting trends and even exit polls will only emerge way past midnight our time here in India. The US has asked Pakistan to ensure a full prosecution and expeditious trial of Hafiz Saeed, 2008 Mumbai terror attack mastermind and chief of the banned Jamaat-ud-Dawa, in line with its international obligations. The US reaction has come hours after an anti-terrorism court in Lahore on Wednesday indicted Saeed and 3 of his top aides, Hafiz Abdul Salam bin Muhammad, Muhammad Ashraf and Zafar Iqbal, on terror financing charges. And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of Newsnight, but all the latest continues right here on DD India. Stay tuned.